Okay, now our guest with us today is Representative Ken Ivory. He will be joining us here in just a moment. But to give a good review of what we'll be talking about today, he has two great bills that are up and coming. One is actually going to be heard in committee today about the appropriateness of, or concerning the appropriateness of material, sensitive material in the school classroom and school libraries. Another bill that the representative is working on is House Bill 348, if I remember correctly. And so it looks like the good representative has joined us. We'll add him to the conversation, and let's see what this bill or these bills are all about. Representative Ivory, it's great to have you.
Hello, Whit. Great to be with you. Yeah, we've got some exciting things coming up. So we're trying to make wealth accessible to everyone, not just the rich, right? Real wealth has always been held and stored and transacted in precious metals, right? Gold and silver. That's God's money going back 5,000 plus years. And, it's kind of not really been obtainable to the average person. And so what we're doing with House Bill 348 is we make gold accessible and functional for everyone. So the $10 or the $10 million you store in gold or silver today will, if it's the $10, it'll buy the same hamburger and meal at the restaurant today and next year and 10 years from now and 100 years from now, because gold and silver hold their value where we know what's been happening with the dollar. It's our wealth, as you know, our wealth, our earnings and our savings, our labor, our sweat, our pursuit of happiness, which is stored and embodied in money, has been eroded right out from under us. It's being actually stolen by the printing of the dollar, and most people don't even realize that that's happening.
Right, inflation is called the silent tax or the hidden tax, right? I've read through your bill. I love it. I've been to your meetings. I think that this is a game changer for the citizens of Utah. And like you pointed out, it's a good way to fight against inflation. So how does inflation happen? You mentioned printing the dollar. Who causes inflation? How does it affect us?
There's a great story I just posted on my Facebook page. In 1971, Lyndon Johnson, and then following him, Richard Nixon, had been printing dollars to pay for the Vietnam War and what was known then as the Great Society. And because after World War II, the United States was the dominant economy in the world, and the United States unseated the British pound as the world reserve currency. Everyone said, we want to trade in your currency. You're the economic powerhouse of the nation. We want to trade in your currency. And we said, great, the dollar's going to be directly convertible to gold, $35 to an ounce of gold. And that was the standard in the world. And we promised that we would have sufficient gold to back up the dollars. Well, in the 1960s, they just started printing and saying, hey, nobody will know. We can just, instead of going back and taxing people or borrowing more money, we'll just print a little more. Nobody will ever know. And that story is played out throughout all of human history. We'll water down the soup, we'll cut the quality a little bit. No one will ever know. But when it comes to money, that is our liberty. That is our life. That's what we have the representation of our work and our labor and our property, we put into something called money. And when it's convertible to gold and it's a fixed standard, it is money. Well, in 1971, because we've been printing so many dollars, France and other European countries said, we want the gold instead of the dollars. And at one point, France even sent a destroyer to New York Harbor, loaded with pallets of dollars, and said, we want the gold. And President Nixon redeemed for them, but then shut the gold window and said, it's now closed. We're not going to ship off all of the gold in Fort Knox. And since 1971, we've never known what's in Fort Knox, but what we do know is they closed the gold window. And there was a lot of economic disruption from that period until 1973, when Henry Kissinger, who just passed away recently, he went to the Middle East and he said, look, here's the deal. We'll protect you. We'll defend you with our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and we'll sell you military equipment if and only if you only sell oil for the dollar. They agreed to that. That's what became known as the petrodollar. And so all the world to buy oil had to have dollars. And our agreement was, we got caught with our hand in the cookie jar. We're not going to print more than there is oil. We're not going to print out of control again. Of course, we know the rest of that story. It's like Golem's ring, right? I mean, nobody's ever able to keep that promise where I can just dip in a little bit, nobody will know. And what we know since then, they have been printing dollars massively. And so when you think about where does the value of a dollar that's just printed, digitally created come from? Well, it comes from every other dollar in existence. And so as they create a new $1 trillion to give COVID stimulus, and they create a new $1 trillion to pay the interest, or $2 trillion to fund the deficit, the overspend every year, they quite literally just steal the value from everything we've ever saved and everything we earn or will ever earn. It's the most regressive, the most destructive tax of all. And now we're at a place where the currency from 1971 is about 85 to 90% less valuable than it was when they did it. In fact, just a quick anecdote, and then I'll have questions and go another direction. But in 1971, the average home cost $17,000. We're talking a lot up here about affordable housing. We've spent about $1 billion over the last 4 or 5 sessions to try to make housing affordable as a state government. 1971, average home $17,000 or 17,000 grams of gold. Today, the average home is more than $600,000. That 17,000 doesn't even come close to a down payment. But the 17,000 grams of gold buy you 2 homes today. That's what the printing of money has done to the value of our dollar. So with this bill, we allow Utahns, everyone can play. You can buy $10 or $10 million of gold or silver, and you preserve the purchasing power of your earnings and your savings and your life that you put into that. And we make our ability to transact in real money again, and not just currency.
Right. It's historically known. It's a historically known fact that gold and silver, both, they preserve their value over the long term as a hedge up against inflation. And that's why governments hoard gold. That's why they purchase gold. And that's why so many countries around the world right now are, even though the price of gold is over $2,000 an ounce, they're still hoarding and purchasing as much gold as they possibly can, because they know something big is coming. They know that some economic hard times are on their way. It's just a matter of when and not if. So is this bill going to solve all of our problems or financial problems as a country, or is this just a way to does it only fight inflation? How can we do this? Because historically, a person cannot just take an ounce of gold, go to Walmart and say, I'd like to buy my groceries. So how does this do this? How does it make it accessible to the common consumer?
Yeah, in fact, I'd like to say this will make all your wildest dreams come true, but I can't say that.
Pedro,
of course,
right?
Vote for Pedro. That's right. But what it will do is it will give everyone a choice, and that's what we're talking about. We're giving real choices to real people in Utah to say, I want to take the representation of my earning and saving and labor and property, and I want to store it in gold and silver in a way that is functional and transactional. Now, that can mean a number of things. So as the state of Utah, we're not going to predetermine what that is. So through the treasurer's office, we'll set standards where whatever the transactional mechanism is, the gold, it has to be backed by a fixed weight of gold. The gold has to be vaulted in Utah. It's got to be insured and audited in Utah. It's got to be accessible to that. You have to be able to redeem out into gold or US currency on demand. And so those are some of the standards that we're putting in. And then some of the ways that could play out, the app that you saw at the meeting that we had last week, there's a British company called Glint Pay, and they're already doing this in the United Kingdom, but not with the kinds of standards and things that we'll have to protect people from demonetization, debanking, like happened with the Canadian truckers, and the things that they're eyeing with the CBDCs, that they want to get control of money so they can control the conduct of people. But basically, you could have a physical representation of fractional gold, like the gold backs. You could have an electronic representation of actual gold, like the Glint Pay, where you've got an app and you can buy, 5, 10, 5 million, 10 million of gold or silver. You've got it on an app. You can see exactly what the amount is against the dollar, and you can buy a soda pop with it, or you could buy a house. But it's immediately transactional and functional.
And I think that the technology behind Glint Pay, and they're not the only ones. There are others that are out there. The technology is just amazing. That's there. The CEO, who I was able to sit down with and talk with and learn about this whole system, it's amazing because it's tied in with a big credit card company, and so you can just it is actual gold held in a vault, tied to a credit card from this major credit card company that tells you in real time how much that gold is worth or that bullion is worth. And then you can deduct that from your account as you go purchase something from Walmart. It's amazing. And you mentioned gold backs as another way, not digitally, but as you can hand a bill over to some of these companies around the state of Utah. It's another way that individuals can hedge their against inflation. And there we have a gold back right there. Current value, example, that's right. $1. So what is that? About $17
yeah,
right
so
now?
this is 1/1000th of a troy ounce. And so this at current exchange rates, this is about $4 to $4.50. And yeah, there are thousands of Utah companies that accept these. In fact, one of the appropriations chairs that we had talked to about this last week, over the weekend, he went to get a haircut, and the barber had a sign, "We proudly accept gold backs." And he was like, "Oh man, I wish I had some things." I said, "Well, you mentioned that you had some gold coins. You can just take out your pocket knife and shave off a few flecks and pay them that way. Or we can have a system that allows you to trade functionally, transactionally, because obviously it's impractical to think you're going to break off a bit of a gold bar or a fraction of a coin. But like you mentioned, with technology today, we have the ability to have that gold physically sitting in a location in Utah that's secured, that's audited, that's insured, and your gold is tied to an exact weight amount, or your representation in the app is tied to an exact weight amount of gold that then you can transact. If you buy some, your name, right, your digital ID is put on that additional amount of gold. If you sell some, then it's debited away from that actual gold. And so then if we, heaven forbid, we have some kind of a meltdown scenario, whatever it may be, that gold's in Utah. It's accessible in Utah. The ability to get your hands on the actual physical gold is in Utah. And so there's that security mechanism. The other part is we are seeing, unfortunately, right? We saw with the Canadian truckers, they shut off their money. They shut off the ability for people to send money to them. We're seeing with the World Economic Forum and those types, I think it's something like 97% of all of the central banks are planning to have a central bank digital currency in place by like 2028. And if you read some of the things that they've said, or there's some videos out there where they actually gleefully say, "We're so excited about this. This is going to allow us to control how many cheeseburgers Whit eats, or how many miles you drive in your car, or the flights that you take. And then heaven forbid that you may buy guns or ammunition." And they believe that by controlling people's money, they control what we do. I mean, it is a very direct control mechanism that is just pure socialism. And in Utah, we're not going to go down that road. So, and again, this is simply giving people the choice. If someone wants to have the central bank digital currency or to continue to transact in the dollars that they're devaluing by the minute, printing more, then by all means. But if they want to have a choice to store their labor, their time, their earnings, their savings, their property in real money that has been real money for 5,000 years, then that's what this bill does. It also would allow people to pay taxes in gold and silver, which advances the argument that gold is a currency and not an asset subject to capital gains. And then it would allow us to store some percentage of the rainy day fund in gold and silver, like all the central banks are doing at record pace. And then with an income to the state in gold, it would allow us to do bonding. You know, the revenue bonds that we do for schools and highways, we could denominate bonds in gold. So imagine you're looking to buy municipal bonds and there's a 30-year bond denominated in dollars, and right next to it, there's a 30-year bond denominated in gold. Which one do you think is going to hold its value 10 years, 20 years, 30 years out? And so that would substantially lower the cost of our debt service and save the state millions of dollars in debt service and establish Utah as the world center for a gold economy. Did you know that our number one import, our number one export, you know what that is?
What is it?
Gold, both accounts.
Oh.
It's our number one export by amount.
Nationally or in our state?
In Utah.
Okay.
Right, in Utah. Gold is our number one export by far, many times over. It's also our number one import. And many people would ask, well, how can you do that? Nevada sends all of the gold that it mines to Utah to be refined, as do many other states. We've got refineries, we've got vaults, we've got all of the infrastructure for this right here in Utah.
And it makes sense that Utah would be this tip of the spear when it comes to these sorts of matters. Now, in reading your bill, Utah already allows for gold and silver to, Representative Ivory, it looks like we lost you. Are you there, Representative Ivory? All right, well, while we wait for Representative Ivory to come back, hopefully he'll be able to come back with us. As I was saying, in the bill, it points out that gold and silver are already allowed to be used on a transactional basis. You can already use gold and silver as a currency. What the bill does is it allows that to open up to actually not just be gold and silver that has the government stamp of approval. This would also include that's minted by the United States federal government. It also would allow for gold and silver that's minted by other sources as well. And we would call that bullion. Looks like we have Representative Ivory back with us. Representative, thanks for coming back.
So sorry. I jump into the majority caucus to talk about this state sovereignty bill. I'm the floor sponsor for Scott Sandel's bill on that. I need to hop in on that. Shouldn't take long. I can either come back or we can continue at another time, whatever is most convenient for you.
You know what? That's another amazing bill. Senator Sandel is my senator. Please go ahead. I'll finish up here with our listeners, and thanks for being on today.
Thank you very much. House Bill 348, House Bill 29.
Okay.
Thanks.